Go.
Go. Good morning, everyone. Kenny, we'd like to welcome you to the Property Management Committee. You're full of excitement and we'll put you to work, so welcome. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. I'd also ask that you, as a courtesy to all, please ensure that you have silenced your cell phones. Each director has received notice of this committee meeting. The public meeting notice was properly posted as required by law. All the committee members indicated that they would be present for this meeting. At this point in the meeting, we have set aside time to hear from you, the general public. Those of you that were interested in providing comments and filled out one of the cards available at the reception's desk will be called to make your comments at this time. This morning, we had no public comments listed. So we're going to move forward with the agenda. The first agenda item is discussion and possible action on internal evaluations and recommendations regarding the acquisition of certain tracts of land owned by the Brazos River Authority at Possum Kingdom, Lake and Young County, Texas, presented by Blake Kettler, Executive Projects Portfolio Manager. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. With this agenda item, we'll update the committee on the first set of properties that were evaluated on the northern end of Possum Kingdom Reservoir as part of our internal property evaluation initiative. As you may recall, at an earlier committee and board meeting this year, we established a systematic approach to apply to evaluating our property holdings internally for alignment with our mission and strategic goals. The BRA continues to recognize the need for pursuing further evaluation of our properties to determine highest and best use. As a brief reminder, the internal evaluation of properties considers factors such as operational necessity, property access, easements, encumbrances, flooding, water quality, species considerations, recreation, current and future development, and mineral rights. These factors are considered on an individual property basis within a scoring matrix to provide an overall score that will weigh into a recommendation of highest and best use. In addition, we also evaluated the associated property documents for any concerns, issues, or other consideration in determining a recommendation for the property moving forward. We began the evaluation of property starting at Possum Kingdom. Possum Kingdom has majority of BRA retained properties totaling about 12,000 acres on 386 tracts. BRA staff has started the evaluation at the top end of the reservoir, moving down south, considering tracts grouped into manageable allocations. Once the evaluation is complete, BRA staff will make a recommendation to the committee here and also to the board of directors for determination of highest and best use, and that's why we're here today. So here is the initial grouping of tracts that we evaluated. We're going to focus on the tracts located on the northern reaches of the reservoir. The tracts appear towards the city of Graham, and it's only representing one, but there's three tracts as part of that. We'll get into those in a subsequent agenda item. But looking at the ones mainly located on the northern end of PK or along the river there. So just a bit of property information to get started. These properties range in size from 100 acres to 336 acres. All tracts were purchased through a general warranty deed between 1938 and 39 for the construction of Possum Kingdom Reservoir. There's approximately 23 acres that were acquired as part of property PK 0261 right here through a quitclaim deed. Grantor reserved all oil and gas and other mineral rights, and the grantor retained access for livestock on contiguous property owned by the grantor to cross to the water's edge for the purpose of watering livestock. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Tiffany. I'm going to let her kind of talk through the evaluation, the assessment of those properties, and then I'll wrap it back up with our recommendation.
Hi, if you'll remember back earlier in the year, we presented our matrix on how we're going to evaluate the properties, and these all have gone through. Just as a weird coincidence, they all rated out as 3. In the scoring matrix, a 5 was of the highest, most beneficial environmental use or future potential for being beneficial to BRA, and the lower you go in the scoring, the less likely it is to be a property we may wish in the future we'd kept versus selling. All the properties along the river that we're working on now, the bright green colored line is critical habitat is declared by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for endangered species. Well, if we sold, that wouldn't necessarily become a problem for us. It would, depending on what ends up looking bad, happening to said properties may not look so great just because we have the requirement in our enabling legislation to protect natural resources. So one, I think development potential would be severely limited by this critical habitat. I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would come in and defend that vigorously because that is the only segment in the basin where those fish are known to occur or in the state. Additionally, all those properties, 100% of them are in the 100-year floodplain, so they're going to have some limited development potential anyway. They do, for the most part, all provide us a fairly healthy buffer for filtering runoff before it reaches the river, which will benefit the quality of Possum Kingdom. They all contain some degree of identified wetlands, and they do all provide good contiguous wildlife habitat. In addition, most of the soils are not that great on those lands for septic tanks, which then could either require significant engineering workarounds to make that more favorable, or it's going to be a potential water quality problem if somebody tries to put, say, 100 septic tanks in small lots on those properties. We'll see issues like we see at Granbury, where you see a lot of infiltration from poorly functioning septic systems. And then the current route use, most of them are undeveloped. Two of the properties do have some roads on them, appear to be county roads. That is. Oh, any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Tiffany. So based on the findings through that evaluation property, or the evaluation of those properties, as staff, we have determined the highest and best use for this group of properties is to continue to maintain ownership to preserve and protect the natural resources in this area. These properties serve as a natural barrier for water quality protection, stream bank stabilization, erosion prevention, and wildlife habitat. They could also potentially serve the purpose of conservation opportunities to support our mission and strategic goals moving forward, maybe opportunities for mitigation banking or something along those lines. So with that said, we do have a resolution for consideration, but we'll entertain any questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
So this is the first time that we've used the matrix, correct? In evaluating property. So are we satisfied now that, hey, that's good, or were there any findings that, oh, there was some new wrinkle here that maybe we need to add or tweak the
I don't think anything that necessarily at this point adds. I've done quite a few other properties just to make sure it continues to work on different sizes and things, and it does seem to be giving us varied results. I do think when we present the Graham, there is still an element of best professional judgment in that, which we'll discuss why we think that those properties are maybe not a good retention option for BRA, that I can't encompass in a model like that. The model still has to be somewhat generic to be functional across all parts of BRA and properties. So there will still be some site-specific recommendations from time to time.
Well, good. I'm glad that we feel like we did a robust job on the development of the matrix, and I know you put that together, Tiffany, so good job.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
One thing that I don't see in this evaluation is anything having to do with cost of maintenance of those properties. I see a mention of roads, and I think, Tiffany, you mentioned that these are county roads.
And I believe they're county roads. In the larger evaluation, this is not everything that got evaluated. So we do have, is it currently being utilized for BRA? Some calculation of how much level of effort as far as oversight for permitting, septic systems, that sort of thing. So that is built into the larger matrix. For these properties, these seem to be the things that scored them the highest to lead us to the conclusion that these would be wise for BRA to hold on to, at least for the interim.
Okay, so back in the evaluation somewhere you've considered,
Correct.
what does the BRA incur as far as cost?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We coordinate with operations and maintenance staff when we're going through this evaluation process to understand what those factors are and issues, concerns on that end of things.
And they did contribute to the development of the matrix too. Some of those things are their ideas that were
All
included.
right,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I apologize. I have slept through too many board meetings. I don't recall the matrix. Is there any way I get a copy of the matrix to sort of refresh my memory?
We can share that. Yes, sir.
And I know the new gentleman on our committee probably like to see the matrix also, but it would sort of help bring everything into focus real quick.
So walk through the matrix with you,
If
explain
you do that, or
how.
if you give me a copy, I don't want to waste your time on that.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can certainly get that to you,
Okay.
Director Bourne.
Yes, sir. All right. Any other questions? All right, I will, here's the resolution. Here's what it looks like. It's on 2 slides, so just give you a quick look at that, and then I can walk us through it. Okay. Be it hereby resolved that the Property Management Committee recommends to the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority adoption of the following proposed resolution. Whereas staff has developed and the Property Management Committee has approved a systematic methodology and process for internally evaluating real property owned by the Brazos River Authority to determine the best use of such real property. Whereas staff has evaluated the following tracts, which are located at the northernmost point of Possum Kingdom Reservoir in Young County, Texas, PK 0383, PK 0261, PK 0374, PK 0302, and PK 0318. Whereas based upon the evaluation, staff has determined that maintaining ownership of each of these tracts will serve to further the efforts of the Brazos River Authority to preserve and protect the natural resources of the Brazos River Basin, as they provide a beneficial natural barrier for water quality protection benefits, stream bank stabilization, and erosion control and wildlife habitat. Further, these properties may also be utilized for potential future conservation opportunities to support the Brazos River Authority's mission and strategic goals. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby resolves to retain ownership of tracts PK 0383, PK 0261, PK 0374, PK 0302, PK 0318 to support these efforts.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Director Savage, second by Director Wilson. Please poll the committee.
Chairwoman LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Boren,
Yes.
Director Fernandez,
Yes.
Director Savage,
Yes.
Director Weldon,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Lloyd.
Yes.
Did she call my name?
I was going to say, did you call Director Boren? Yes, ma'am.
She did? She call my name? Yes?
Yes.
It's 2 yeses.
That's right.
Started up.
The second agenda
Double down on
item
that.
is discussion and possible action to declare surplus plus and convey to the city of Graham for public purposes real property owned by the Brazos River Authority in Young County, Texas, presented by Blake Kettler, Executive Projects Portfolio Manager. Sorry.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and members of the committee that were evaluated on the west side of the city of Graham as part of this same internal property evaluation initiative. So in the prior agenda item, we discussed pursuing and implementing the systematic approach to apply to evaluating these properties. These tracts that we'll cover here in this agenda item were also part of that initial evaluation, but ultimately rose to a different direction and recommendation. So first, we'll walk you through the properties themselves, the evaluation findings, and then same format, finish up with our recommendation. So the properties we're discussing are located on this map in orange, green, and yellow, and the corresponding size and acres located to the left. This isn't blue, but it says yellow. Yellow is really tough to read, so I chose blue instead. But These properties are located along Salt Creek up here, ranging in size from 2.3 acres, this little bitty section here, to 112 acres, the tract there in yellow. For those that are familiar with the city of Graham, the town square is located over here. And for those that may have been involved with the Graham flood control project or flood mitigation project, a lot of these properties are down here located in the 10-year floodplain. And I'll touch on those here in just a little bit. So just to cover some of the property aspects, all tracts were purchased through a general warranty deed from various owners between November 25th, 1938 and May 10th, 1939 for the construction of Possum Kingdom Reservoir. Grantors reserved all oil, gas, and other mineral rights. As far as reservations, the grantor retained access to water livestock on contiguous property owned by the grantor. In turn, the grantor granted the grantee ingress-egress access on contiguous property for business purposes. This is not a surprising reservation. This was pretty common in this area. I'm not sure that it fully still applies today. A lot of these adjacent tracts have been split up and sold off over time. In addition, we, as a grantee, retain a flowage easement up to the meets and bounds for the ability to inundate as part of the operation of Possum Kingdom Reservoir. This remains in effect for us and also for our successors. The properties were purchased by meets and bounds description as opposed to a certain contour or elevation. This is common in the PK area, and if you go back through the history of the organization and how we acquired property to build these reservoirs, Possum Kingdom being the first reservoir that we built, what we'd run into when we go out to purchase the property to build the reservoir, you'd have those property owners say, if you're going to take my, the farmland adjacent to the river, then you're about the remainder of my tract. And so we ended up with a lot of additional property up there, hence the 12,000 acres, 386 tracts. So that looks a little different as you move through history, through the organization. We became a little more fine-tuned with our approach there at Granbury. We do own a little bit of additional property, but when you get down to Limestone, it's basically the footprint of the reservoir. So that's, I think, a major factor in why you see the difference across those reservoirs. As part of our property evaluation, we reviewed the associated documents. There were no major surprises there. Pretty much we're in line with what we typically see in the area. So everything was good from the document review portion. I'll hand it over now to Tiffany and let her kind of talk you through the findings, and then I'll be back with our recommendation.
These all ranked environmentally very similar to the ones we just discussed along the river, because the matrix evaluates distance to the stream. So the evaluation is really more on this one to the benefit to Salt Creek. So while these properties are environmentally beneficial, you can see there's wetlands. The bulk of the properties, I missed that one little green one on this map, are in the floodplain, and even that one, about 50% of the property is in the floodplain. So the same evaluation you just saw, but really the distance where I made the best professional judgment that this one is one that could go. The distance from PK and the river is significant, and so we are getting less environmental benefit directly to the reservoir from retaining these properties, especially if we have a willing recipient in Graham who is willing to commit to leaving them undeveloped, using them for parks and wildlife purposes. So for that one, we felt there was less need for BRA to retain those. They're far away. They definitely have an increased maintenance and observation costs for our staff because they have to travel further to get to them. So for these, even though they are environmentally beneficial, when we discussed it as a group, we felt that these were ones that we could divest ourselves of by transferring to the city of Graham and getting those off our rolls, even though they are environmentally beneficial, since the city of Graham's committing to no development and using them for parks and beneficial purposes, that those weren't ones we need to keep on our rolls. Any questions?
You're using the word, we're conveying this property to the city of Graham. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly? When you use the word convey, you're giving it to them. That's what I interpret it to mean. We're not selling it, we're giving it. Now, why would we do that? Why would we not at least sell it? Well, first of all, that's my first question. That's just a businessman to me. And second thing, let's say, for instance, 20 years from now, Graham all of a sudden starts booming, and they look at that property, and a developer comes in and says, I think we can make a great business decision and have development there, and all of a sudden, all things that you don't want to take place starts taking place around the shores for development. You know, I would just be I'm very cautious of when you give a city something and then the long-term implication of it, not today, not 5 years, but 10 and 15 years from now, what can take place.
Yeah, so we've been in discussions with City of Graham, City Manager Eric Garrity. Blake mentioned earlier on, probably 5-10 years ago, we we gave to the City of Graham. It's properties on just to the east of the existing properties. And this, as Tiffany had mentioned, those areas are within the city, and so we were required to maintain those properties. So we had to send up mowers and all kinds of stuff because it's in the city limits. So we had to, keep it 6 inches below. And this is really a riparian area. But when we conveyed those properties to the city, they're going to do exactly the same thing that we were going to do with it, is basically keep it a riparian area. We will retain the inundation easement over that property, so we'll still be able to flood it. We won't increase our liability or at all. They're going to maintain that property. They're going to have walkways, maybe an amphitheater. I don't think that'll ever come about, but they've mentioned that before. But they want to also then move forward and place like staging certain areas to be able to canoe up and down. They want to make it a green space essentially. But the property, I guess, if we were to try to sell it to the City of Graham, that they're not interested in purchasing it.
Well, I guess I want to go back.
But
and
going back to your development property too, the property that's just directly to the east is in the 10-year floodplain, so it's going to flood a lot more frequently than this property. This property is still in the 100-year floodplain, but I don't see any development that would occur within this
Well,
property.
no, it won't take place today, 10 years maybe, but to 20 years it might. But working with cities, I think you need to always remember, good fences make good neighbors. And are you going to have words in the conveyance that will, like you said, that will protect all of our interests and concerns, that they cannot do that without our express approval?
Yes, sir. We haven't presented that aspect to the board yet for consideration or to the committee, but just like the Graham project, there'll be an agreement. The last agreement was probably 60 pages. We'll provide that to you. There's also a reversionary clause within that agreement, as with the Graham project. If they quit using it for the purposes that we spell out, it'll come back to the BRA.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Fernandez.
You guys kind of addressed my question, and that was with regard to deed restrictions. But sounds like with what Matt said, I mean, there's been some thought into that, and I don't know if you go into deed restrictions or if this agreement covers it, but just being mindful of, like Director Bourne said, not letting total control go and being able to counteract any activities they may pursue in the future.
Yes, sir. I believe we'd address it on both ends. We'd address it through restrictions and also in the agreement as well.
Thank you.
Director Savage.
Just clarifying, so if we retain an inundation easement, they can't really do anything if they know, we can flood it whenever we want, right?
Yes, sir.
That
That's one of
satisfies
the
my-
challenges with this property. Along Salt Creek, it's in the 10-year floodplain. There's no habitable structures or really any structures that you can put in place there. So it's, basically your options are environmental protections, green space, some type of those activities. And that's kind of both, what City of Graham would like to pursue as well, BRA, the environmental protections there.
Director Lattimore.
Yes, sir.
Mine is really quick, but just to put a point on this pencil, I think what everybody's saying here is it's really important to us that we not create through any conveyance the ability of any third party to become a long-term pain in the side of the BRA. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Director Weldon.
I'm going to just jump in here and just say, based on some experience in Stephenville, the community worked and had to purchase a lot of land to create a parkway and a walkway to preserve the river. There was a multi-agency collaborative effort to get a National Park Service grant to create a master plan for the river. And today, there's a green space preserve there. So this, in a way, could help Graham springboard into that. And I would encourage them, if they small town may not be aware of their potential to do that, we could communicate that to them as a part of this effort. It could turn out to be a really win-win for both, because it would preserve the river or the creek, for our purposes, but the community could get assistance from federal or state grants to do what I think I heard might be a vision that the city of Graham is wanting to have. So
Yes, sir.
the maps that you showed, which leads to my question, did not indicate where the city limits is. Are all these properties within the city limits?
They are located in the city limits. I don't know where the exact boundary is, but yes, the
Okay.
properties are
All right.
located in city limits. So I'll try to summarize some of these other points. We talked a little bit about them here already, but basically we got the idea to approach the city of Graham to see if they would be interested in using these properties similar to the properties that were conveyed to them as part of the Graham flood project. So there was interest there. The properties that were conveyed as part of the Graham Flood Project were for use as green space for recreational aspects such as parks and trails and things of that nature. So just a bit of background on the Graham Project for those that may be interested. Because of the risk associated with recurring flooding and associated property damage near Salt Creek, the BRA and the Corps of Engineers initiated a project to evacuate the Salt Creek 10-year floodplain in the city of Graham. And I'll go back a couple slides so you can kind of see that's a lot of this area right in here. The project contemplated the acquisition and evacuation of approximately 122 tracts of land in the project area. BRA maintained its inundation easement over the tracts. The Corps of Engineers facilitated acquisition of the properties through direct purchase and condemnation and assigned the tracts to the BRA. The city has an ongoing interest in maintaining public recreational areas for its citizens, and the BRA desires to mitigate flood risk through maintaining an inundation easement. The agreement between BRA and the city allows the city to create public recreation areas over the tracts, but construction is limited. City has all liability and responsibility for the tracts that were conveyed to the city, and they'll revert back to BRA if the city ceases to utilize for public recreation. So we went, and talked to the city of Graham. The city of Graham met with their council and provided a letter of intent to pursue the conveyance of the property from BRA to the city of Graham for the purposes of using the tracts as green space or for environmental protections, recreational opportunities. Basically, an extension of the other conveyed properties as close out of the Graham Flood Project. So our recommendation is to allow staff to work with the city of Graham to negotiate a transfer of the property, uniform goals, to pursue uniform goals in environmental protections, access, recreation. In addition, these properties will they do require maintenance activities as well. Director Lattimore, during the last agenda item, you kind of asked about some of that. It does require maintenance activities from PK staff, mowing, dealing with dumping, trees, things like that. So I do think that there's efficiencies in conveying these properties as well from an O&M aspect. Just, we can become more focused with our O&M activities up there. Any cost associated with conveying the property, such as survey and title work, will be the city of Graham's to bear. And of course, we'll continue to maintain that flowage easement over the properties associated with operating, maintaining Possum Kingdom Reservoir in accordance with our prior reservations. So, with that, I do have a resolution for the committee to consider, but I will entertain any other questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
Question. I guess I did, somewhere in all this, I missed, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of doing this?
So I think the purpose is, the beginning of our evaluation was to look at our properties to better identify what we have and justify what we have so other folks can't come and take it away from us in the long term. And that was the big umbrella. I think the purpose of this property and trying to divest of this property is that it's a property within the city limits. The city has expressed an interest in making it a park. We as an organization aren't concerned or interested in making it a park. And if we can deed it to them and we can put in this agreement all of the protections that we need to protect our interest in this property, and they can still use it as a park to benefit the city, then we're fine with divesting of it. If that's something that the board doesn't see that is in the best interest of the BRA, we certainly don't have to do it. But that's kind of the thought, Director Bourne, is if they want to turn it into a park system and expand on their parks, then we'll let them do it, as long as we can continue to protect the BRA interest in that property. And quite candidly, the flowage easements and future development of the property would be what our biggest concerns are.
I just hate giving up land since they don't make more of it, as they always say.
Sure.
Texas is growing. I just hate giving up land to any entity, not knowing what it's not today or 10 years, it's always gonna be something long-term. And if we're going to give something up, I certainly think ought to at least get some monetary, back. Of course, what you're saying is, they're going to make it a park. There's some value to that. I just fundamentally hate giving up land that you own that's a natural resource, because the state's going to be getting so big in population. I just hate giving it up.
I understand.
And I don't think, David, since I've been here, I've voted no one time for anything, because I totally agree, and I really agree with a lot what you said, but at the same time, I'm gonna vote no on this one, not out of disrespect for all the hard work y'all have done. It's a fundamental view that I have, and if I was gonna give up land, it certainly would be to sell it. I sure wouldn't, but it'd have a lot of restrictions, so that's my comment.
Thank you. Director Weldon?
Just to address that comment, what about, and a lot of times with these grants, the ability to show in-kind contribution in a monetary fashion to say, even though there's not dollars exchanged, there's credit given for the purposes of matching dollars. A lot of grants from and again, the trail was a TxDOT grant that was like a 90-10 or 70-30 or something, but in-kind contributions could count against that, and the state of Texas would recognize that. And so I think, part of the compromise might be here to consider the value of the property to be stated in this document to contribute to an in-kind contribution credit for it. So at least there might be a way to account for the value of it.
Chairman Flores?
So, Blake, I don't see it there, it's probably on the next page. It does say that if they don't use it for parkland, that it comes back to the BRA, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So 20 years from now, if somebody came in on council and said that they want to build, buildings on stilts because it's in the floodplain, they technically can't do that without contacting the BRA. We can take the land back because it's no longer used for parkland. Correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Director Fernandez?
As a follow-on to that, and kind of going back to the previous tracks that we looked at, we have some type of review process, not annually, but every 5 years, to look at the tracks, especially the ones that we decided to retain, in the event that a future review maybe stipulates we can give these up. And similarly with these, do we, even though we divest, do we maintain these tracks in our database because, we've got these items that we're reviewing, and to her point that, you know, if they come back and they haven't used it for parkland, that we can stop and say, hey, you guys hadn't done what you said you were gonna do, and we're gonna take it back. So kind of the review process is what I'm getting at.
So a few things there. Yes, they will be maintained in the database. Not only just those properties, adjacent properties, things like that. We try to maintain any property in the vicinity of our reservoir in that database. As far as reviewing these, the frequency moving into the future, I think the objective or the goal is to provide direction for staff, so when we have requests that roll in, different things like that, we can say, you know, the committee or the board has taken a stance on these properties. Not saying that we won't review them into the future, because board members change, staff change, thoughts on properties change. So we will, I guess, we will have to evaluate sometime in the future. I don't know what that frequency is just yet, but that's something that we've been discussing. We haven't really nailed down. Is that 10 years from now? Is that 20 years from now? But that is something that we're considering and discussing.
And I would say, as far as the environmental evaluations, as long as we leave that land as it is right now, which right now most of these properties we're not doing active maintenance on, it is wildlife, and there's not going to be a lot of change unless we go and do something to it. So at that point, if we turn it into a park, or we want to go do Brazos water snake mitigation along the river, then I think it would be appropriate to reevaluate that property, because then it would likely even score even higher than it currently did. But as far as floodplains, the more development we see, we're actually seeing widening of floodplains because we have more concrete in the world, maybe not necessarily right around PK yet, but the trend over time is we're seeing floodplains get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger because we're flooding more things more frequently. So I don't know that we need to, unless we have knowledge of a substantial change on a property in how BRA is using it on one we keep, that we need to maybe reevaluate as frequently as 5 years, but more on an as-needed basis as we do different things with the property if we do something with them.
David, did you have something?
I do. Let me make a recommendation to the board. You all have a lot of really good concerns that we didn't anticipate. Let us go back and put the meat on the skeleton of an agreement between us and the city of Graham. This committee is going to be getting together after the first of the year to deal with airport and other property things. Let us bring those deal points to you so that you can better understand what's in the agreement, and then we can further this discussion, would be my
That was going to be my recommendation as
Okay.
well. Yep. I'd like to make a few closing comments on this. So I know that when you presented the matrix and how you were doing the evaluation, conceptually, I think it's fantastic to get it in the database, and that we have a very clear history of the properties and all associated information with it. Maybe just for next time we bring this to the board, I know that this topic, this agenda item will not go today, but the first one will. It might be good, just, I don't know, David, you or Blake, to give a 2-minute overview of the process, just as a good refresher. You guys look at it every day. This is what you do. We think about it every other month, and then property, it just might be, because you've put a lot of time and effort and work into it, and it's worth the few minutes to come back and refresh us. One additional comment that I would say is, to your point on the recommendation to push this a little bit, that was going to be what I asked for, because when you read the letter of intent, it sounds like we're aligned, but I agree with Director Bourne that it's one thing for us today to be aligned, but we need to make sure the language is all correct. And then to that point, maybe think about when we come as a committee that to retain the land and to reevaluate in a few years is an easy discussion usually. And then if we were going to divest of something, then that might be a different discussion. But either way, I think what's important for us who are not in the details, because that's what you guys do, I think it's important to highlight what are the opportunities with this property and what are the risks associated, whether we retain or divest. because that's the important thing to us. So we can stay aligned with the BRA mission and we make sure we're making the right decisions on these properties. Did anyone else have any comments? Director Lloyd?
I'm also curious about the matrix, probably just from a nerdy spreadsheet standpoint. And it occurred to me, it might be cool to see Tiffany walk through it in like a Teams meeting, sharing her screen, if that's even feasible. And I don't know how that would work with the Open Meetings Act, but if you'd be willing to do that, I'd love to see that. But I'm just throwing it out there. No need to respond to that right now. I don't know if anybody else would be interested, but, optional for board meetings to log into a Teams meeting, see her share her screen, whatever. I don't know if that's feasible or not. So.
Maybe suggest that we could do something before a board meeting, like if we don't have a committee meeting, that we could do something like that. I know that we've gone over this and looked at this.
But we can, and we also have new members on the committee too, and I think that would probably be worth our while to do it at the next committee meeting.
Director Lattimore.
Mine's going to be real quick. I'm reading this. Execute an agreement upon terms determined acceptable to the Brazos River Authority. I think it would be great if the next time, I'm hinging off of what the chair has just said, if you could come forward with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the number is, exactly the terms that we consider acceptable.
Yes, sir. That's what I plan to do at the next meeting.
Okay, that's it.
Director Savage.
Yeah.
In the cities, we have planning and zoning, and we may approve a site plan, but we restrict that site plan to specifics that they have to bring back for us for final approval for the site plan. I look at this as a site plan.
Sure.
And maybe if y'all had final sign off on they should present to you improvements, what they'll be, how they'll look, and if it flows with it. It sort of follows that kind of mentality, I think.
Sure.
Director Savage.
I'd like to just remind that our highest best use is really what the function of our committee is, right? And let's just say for the moment that regardless of ownership, what would be the highest best use? And if it's with the city, because it's in the city limits anyway, and it reduces our maintenance costs. I really like what Director Weldon said, where you can kind of put some kind of value on it, where you get some benefit, either in grant applications, whatever, and also help educate them so that we allow them to get the highest best use, which is also the highest best use for us. Sounded like the highest best solution.
Director Weldon.
I just wanted to amplify one point. I think that the city of Graham needs to do some homework about the potential opportunities they have. So when they get back together with us, they're kind of thinking in different terms, because this could be a great opportunity for them to leverage that.
Yeah.
And if they don't do it right, they'll miss out. And a community like that there's no way they can afford to do what they're thinking of doing. So this is a way to maybe help them get there.
Very good discussion. Anyone else have anything? Blake, Tiffany, Mike, thank you. I know this was a lot of work. This is the first time we've looked at this, so thank you again for this presentation. And I will accept a motion for adjournment. Director Wilson, do I have a second? Director Savage, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.